Threat neutralized.
Ah, but is it? Yes, COD returns with a new Black Ops 4 title, this time hitting beta thanks to the Xbox One release and a PC version, which I've got another video up if you want to check more information on the PC version specifically. But here we're looking at the Xbox One and the Xbox One X versions thanks to that closed beta. Now this appeared last weekend, and again it shows similar signs to what I've already covered on the PS4 version. But before we get into those, we must touch on a subject which I'm sure is peeing a lot of people off. Yes, this is a title that doesn't come with any single player at all, and it still has the scourge of the gaming world, which is monetary options, loot boxes, and other functions to get more money out of you, or at least the players, the younger demographic, which is a bit of a shame. If you are going to drop a complete single player title, then clearly this game costs less money to make. Activision, you're not struggling for cash, so I would suggest you drop the price quickly to actually give a little bit of benefit back if you're also going to add in the extra option of sucking more money from people by buying additional perks, weapons and other loot boxes in the title that will affect gameplay more than ever. But one of the things that's always struggled with COD is the balance of the weapons. There's always some weapon in there that's massively OP or overpowered and essentially gives somebody an advantage, or at least a huge benefit to how you play the game when you're running through certain levels. Shotguns, certainly the dual akimbo shotguns everyone remembers from Modern Warfare 2, they were massively overpowered, but great fun, and it used to pee a lot of people off. Quick scoping is back in this version, and I'm sure it's going to be fixed at some point. In fact, I think Treyarch have said it, but there's a lot of issues in terms of gameplay and functionality that they keep making the same mistakes, and I don't understand why. That's my first complaint. I know I'm getting into the conversation about gameplay, but I like online titles, and this game has to remember that it's competing with a new Battlefield 5 title, and that looks incredible. I did get access to the closed alpha early in the year, and I will be covering it in more detail in a later video, but certainly visually they're on a different level in terms of what they're delivering in an overall visual online experience. This is across a broad spectrum of areas: asset quality, materials, destructibility, particle systems, environment, map size, even player count. I know there is going to be a battle royale mode with, I don't know, 50, 100 players. I'm not too sure how many they're going to stick into the title here, but what we're seeing from 6 to 12 players here is not a good benchmark for what we're going to expect in a much larger area that we're seeing here in Battlefield and have been seeing for the last few titles. This is still the same old Call of Duty title we've always played, except it's now not got the rocket jump in it now. I've played this game for like 10 years now. Really, it hasn't changed dramatically. So moving away from the gameplay, what are we looking at in terms of the visual quality? Well, just like the PS4 and the Pro version last week, we're looking at a gulf in terms of visual quality and a smaller gap in performance. But no version of all the four that I've tested, well, 5 including the PC version, perform very well. There's certainly lots of work here for Treyarch to work on, and I'm sure they will. This is a beta, this is a closed version, so nobody's saying that this is going to be how it launches. It will improve, it has to improve based on what we're seeing here. But in terms of resolution, I believe the Xbox One version, the S version here that I'm testing, is a step a little bit too far. Now, starting with the big brother, we have again a dynamic resolution. I'm seeing something around the lines of 1440 by 1512 at its lowest point, to 2880 by 1620, and then that temporal AA, which you can see here moving back and forth, is present on both the Xbox One S and the X, as it is on the PS4 and the Pro. So you can see that breakdown of the image as the line moves back and forth as I'm zoomed in here, and you can see it again on the Xbox One S version, which comes in at a very low 800 by 720p. That's the lowest I'm getting on counts. Now, I am seeing it go up to around 810. I'm not seeing any more than that, and that could very well be the temporal AA. It could be just locking out at 720p at this point. It really isn't moving much above that. And you can see this again as the image moves. Any sub-pixel elements like thin lines, alpha, all seem to move and disappear on the Xbox One S. The grills here on the frame, all the details and the textures, everything seems to be lost in movement. Once you stand still, then that image can build back up and you see that temporal AA doing its magic here. But really, in motion on any screen, certainly on a 1080p one, it looks very soft, but on a 4K screen this looks almost unplayable. It's very hard to see. It's very blurry. I know it's not meant for 4K screens, but it is an element that might happen for some people, and I really hope they can improve either the temporal AA or just turn it off and raise the resolution back to something around the 800p mark natively. that kind of element would look better at this point. And we've seen it in other titles. Certainly the Modern Warfare Remaster and Infinite Warfare were much cleaner, sharper looking images than what we're seeing here from Treyarch, and those titles both used a very similar technique with half-width dynamic scaling and maybe even some temporal injection work in there additionally, which I covered in my previous analysis. Even Treyarch's previous title in Black Ops 3 had a much better image quality on the Xbox One even, and it still has all of the elements from the IW engine such as tessellation, PBR-based shading, particle systems. All of these elements are present and correct here, and it's not as if we're seeing a huge leap up in this newer version. We are aware this isn't beyond the art of the possible, but I also know that there's many elements here within the engine and the restrictions and what they're aiming for and what they haven't even shown yet that may be causing these elements to be used to increase that performance levels. But in terms of the visual makeup and the results on screen, I think the S and the X could certainly use a little more than this. Not the Xbox One X, that's fine as it is, that looks very sharp, very clean, and I think they've picked the best solution there. This isn't an unknown, and I really hope they improve it. Now, the Xbox One X does look much better, and it's the sharpest of all the console versions that I've tested, but it really isn't as sharp as you probably would have hoped for. It has got that soft SMAA or temporal AA solution in there, whatever element they're using, which makes it look a lot softer than probably you would expect or hope for a sharper image. It's certainly stronger on consoles than it is on PC, but not by a huge margin. There's certainly elements there where they're using that additional benefit of consoles, which isn't quite as effective on the PC, but it certainly works well enough. And that really is my biggest gripe in terms of image quality. I hope Treyarch really can improve that image quality and the resolution scaling, the temporal AA, to sharpen and improve the image quality. The Xbox One S is, like I say, the worst of the lot. That's not a surprise, but it is almost too soft for my liking. Certainly in a game like this, where you really need to see thin objects and distance in the detail, you lose that sometimes on the S, and that puts you at a disadvantage if you're playing against somebody else on the X, which has a much sharper and cleaner image than you do. More pixels just helps you shoot those ones in the face.
They're dead.
They are really pushing the engine in terms of making sure they're optimizing how they draw triangles, what their lighting like, the LOD system. You can see here, when I look down and look up again, it's missing the fruit boxes they draw back in late. Walking into this room a little bit later on, you can see the lighting, the baked lighting actually draws in on the sign. There's loads of signs here where they're using real heavy cutbacks to keep that performance high. So this isn't an engine that's just been thrown out and they're just trying to get the game working. They've tweaked it here and there and just see what they've got. They've certainly worked hard to optimize it, but there's more work to do. There's a little bit of a reason why I feel this is both a GPU bandwidth specifically and a CPU issue here, but we'll cover that in the PC version. Please check that video out if you want to see more information on the PC. But fundamentally, we're seeing single-threaded performance on my Ryzen 2700 CPU, far beyond anything you're going to get single-thread performance and obviously multi-thread performance on any of these consoles, and we're seeing around 58 to 65% on a single thread at points. That is going to max out and then some anything on one of these CPU cores from the consoles, and that includes the Pro and the X. So this is one of the reasons why I feel we're seeing issues, and you can see that in the frame rate analysis. Every time you shoot something, blow something up, or cause impact and damage to things, you get these spikes to 33 milliseconds. So there's a combination there of both GPU and CPU. In fact, like I said, the whole engine has worked to be optimized here. So I expect a huge uptick in the performance once we get to the final release version. But right now, no version is great. The PC version will not hold 60 FPS. It's very heavily GPU bound. Let me be clear on this. I'm not saying this is a CPU bound title, but it's very heavily limited on every version that you play. This is on an RX 570, a Ryzen 2700, and obviously 16 gig of RAM. This isn't really performing anywhere near that we saw in the older versions of Black Ops 3. So there's certainly work here, and we're seeing the same pattern across the consoles. You can see the Xbox One S version here has average performance into the 40s average, and it drops right down to 30 FPS. And this isn't a one-off. It regularly does this during battles. You're having spikes into 33 milliseconds almost all the time, and pretty much you're seeing some of the spikes bumping up to 66 milliseconds. In addition, just like the other versions, that adaptive VSync at the top section, it tears on both. So it really isn't a title that has high levels of performance at this point. Now, I'm not saying every Call of Duty title has ever been locked. The expectation is around the 50s. That's why I've said the PS4 Pro version is around expectations, because that's really what you expect on consoles. Not a lock solid 60, but near enough. But here on the Xbox versions, we're seeing an additional problem, I feel, or I definitely see, over the PS4 version. I feel the PS4 version is the lead platform, therefore it's slightly better or further along in its development code base than what we're seeing on the other versions. But we're seeing performance that causes not only this kind of issues on performance on both versions, but also the actual online connection is also pretty bad. I'm getting stuttering and juddering and rubber banding that I'm not seeing on PC and PS4 on exactly the same connection at exactly the same time once I flick between the two, unplug the cable, plug it in. So it isn't my connection, it isn't my network, it's something that I can specifically see. Now, this may be that the same standard cheats that are being used, maybe it's people I'm just unlucky and I'm getting people that are doing lag switches to cheat out on the game, I don't know, but it happens far more often, pretty much most of the time on the Xbox, and I didn't get this on the PS4 and the PC, like I say. So performance isn't great, it's in the 40s average on the Xbox One S, that's very bad, that's not where you want it to be, and the PS4 wasn't much better. And the Xbox One X is pretty much there or thereabouts the same as the PS4 Pro. It's better, but not quite as good. I'd say it's slightly worse than the PS4 Pro, to be brutally honest, but this is online, this is multiplayer, this is dynamic. You can't get everything like for like, but it's close enough to say that no version really fills me with confidence at this point. It's no surprise that certain maps perform better or worse than others, and these are some of the areas they're working on, and maybe there's some great maps that they've not shown us yet, or maybe there's some worse maps, like again I refer back to the Battle Royale mode. Now, I just want to say that I really like Treyarch, and I think their technical skills and their chops in terms of what they've done with the game overall, and the engine and improvements are all very high, and I have no fears in terms of what they're delivering here again, and I'm sure they're doing the best as possible. My feeling is that this title is starting to lose its way a little bit. The lack of single player is not something you can miss. I know people will say that it's not a big title, I even said that in the last video as a joke, but you can't launch a title and cut all that back, so maybe the budget isn't there and Activision are really scaling back. Maybe this isn't something they wanted to do and they've tried another game and it got scrapped and it's been kept under wraps and this wasn't something they wanted to deliver. I don't know. There's many areas here that make it feel as if there's other things going on that we don't know about, and this is a result of some of those issues. But we'll have to wait and see with the final release, or at least the open beta later on in the year, to see if they can substantially dig in and make improvements to the performance. You can watch the rest of this video with the Xbox One X analysis and the frame rate to round it all up, and also check out my PC video to get more information on that version. Now, as always, if you enjoyed what I do here and what I put together, remember I'm completely self-funded, independent on my own. I do this all myself, by hand, play, game, record, capture, all the analysis, everything is done by me. And I do it as a part-time hobby. I work full-time, this isn't something that I do full-time, so you can really help me out by liking, subscribing and sharing this and all my other videos where appropriate, reading more on the website, and if you can, digging in and give me any pounds or dollars you can afford on my Patreon site to improve my quality. This isn't for profit, this is to make better quality videos, get better cameras, get an environment, set everything up so I can deliver much more scientific and more consistent videos than I do at the moment. Anyway, enough bleating. I hope you guys and girls enjoyed this. Stay tuned for more, and I'll catch you on the next one.
Mesh mine is safe. Nomad killed. Rifle in charge. Shut down. Rappers won't engage. Nothing to hook onto. Heads up! Mesh mine destroyed.
RCXD standing by. RCXD has been destroyed.
We're all over him. Take the win. Ballistic shield down. Ramsdale available.
Seraph gone.
Be advised. Hostile.